Welcome to another coaching demonstration from the team at MRA. The tool we're showcasing today is At Your Best.
Hey, good afternoon, Kimberly.
Hi, Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm very well indeed. How are you?
Doing okay, thank you. Yeah,
Good. And how are you coming into coaching today?
good. I am feeling very kind of energized today and up and just ready, really ready for this.
Okay, superb. Me too. That makes two of us, which is a really lovely way to start the conversation. So we've obviously been working together for a little while now in terms of coaching, and we've done quite a lot of contracting together around lots of different elements. But just as we enter into this short coaching session today, let's just take a moment to reconnect with some of the key points of the contract. So, and remember, contracting is really about our agreed ways of working together. So we've already talked a little bit around confidentiality and the importance of that. You'll see me note taking. You're welcome to copies of those notes at any time. Maybe an opportunity for you to just play back into me. What do you need from me as your coach today, as we operate in this space for around 15 or 20 minutes?
Yeah, so I think just that kind of, you often talk about high support, high challenge. And I think for me, that's really important is bringing that support and showing me through your challenge, what you're noticing that I might not be seeing.
Sure.
Especially around my blind spots. That's something that I find really helpful, is something I just might not be noticing.
Hmm. And as I potentially bring some of that reflection to you, how do you like to receive that sort of feedback around potentially these blind spot areas? What's important for you in terms of how I show up as the coach, sharing that information?
I think probably with kindness in mind. So thinking about the way that it's delivered. I've spoken about in a previous session, we've talked about one of my values also being fairness and justice and that sort of thing. So maybe a bit of evidence based, but also in a kind way.
Yeah, nice. Blind spots with kindness.
There we go.
There we go. That feels like a competency for coaching. I think we're in a really good space. Well, listen, it might well be that we need to bring some blind spots. We actually might not today in this session. I think we spoke last time, and you wanted to spend some time today exploring a little bit around positive psychology, around what we call at your best, and getting some time to reflect on when you show up brilliantly in the world and what's going on for you when that's happening, what's the impact on you and those around you, and potentially what life's like when you're in survival mode, just getting through. And here we are today as an opportunity to really raise self-awareness of what life's like in those two arenas. How does that sound to you?
Sounds bad.
Okay, good stuff. So you might well have already completed some psychometrics or some tools or some frameworks that you might want to bring into this conversation. So, of course, please feel free to refer to anything that you've already done in this space. But as we enter into the conversation now, it's quite nice to start this conversation with a couple of moments of pause and reflection. And I'd really love you to take a moment just to reflect back over your career, some of those real career highs, not necessarily highs in terms of achievement, although they might be, but moments of absolute joy for you when you look back and think, that was a moment of thrive for me. That was me absolutely delivering my work in a lens that feels absolutely where I want to be going forward. So just give yourself a couple of moments to reflect. As you look back over your career, you're able to draw one or two experiences when you would use the word thrive to describe that experience for you. Just allow yourself a moment, and when you're ready, it'd be really lovely for you to share those.
So something that immediately springs to mind is I was developing a program, and I think what I developed the program and I delivered the program. And the reason why it springs to mind is because it hit all of my buttons.
Mm.
So I think what it was I recognized there was a problem. And the problem was that our more junior colleagues were not getting the same information that our more senior colleagues were. And so they weren't connecting with the strategy of the company. They weren't connecting with the strategy of the team. They didn't understand the direction of travel we were moving in. And they hadn't received the same training, the leadership training that the leaders had, because it was by itself leadership training. And so I spoke to the senior executive and just said, I think there's a big disconnect here. And I'm getting this feedback from people I'm coaching and talking to and people that I'm mentoring. And what I wondered was, can I develop a program to help bring them along? And so I did. And I developed the program. It was a 1-day course, and we brought some fun into the day. We just basically cascaded information. We explained the difference between each level, because that was one thing that people were really struggling with is, why am I not being considered for this promotion? What's the difference? What are they doing that I'm not? So there was clarity around that. And we had a panel, we had an artistic moment where people put together a collage. And it was just, I think it hit all my buttons in that I was able to identify a need. I was able to find a solution to that problem. And then I was able to use the talents that I have to create something that really translated. And then off the back of that, so I got 5-star reviews at the end of the day from a bunch of people who are not people who give 5-star reviews. And after that, the implication from it was incredible in terms of that whole group of people just feeling empowered, asking to go into comments, asking to get involved on things, and actually recognizing this is the direction of travel that we're taking. And they just all got on board. And it was seen all the way up to the senior exec level. And that to me was me at my best, is doing all those things I love with people. Again, I've done the Myers-Briggs. I'm an E preference. And so recognizing that in there, having that sort of ability to share vision with people. So bringing in a bit of my N preference and kind of just that whole like outward facing bit, but also I got a lot from it as well.
What do you notice in even the way in which you're describing that experience? What do you notice about yourself as you're describing?
I feel good. I've got a smile. I feel energized even by telling the story. I love the story in itself. I love the outcome from it. Yeah.
And when you allow yourself a little bit of time, you've referenced there a little bit around your MBTI profile. But if we go into maybe taking a moment to step into the space of values, you've referenced a fairness value earlier in terms of feedback giving, but it feels to me through your description as though your values were very central to that experience. It feels really purposeful. And we often see purpose described through the lens of people's values. Are you okay to share a little bit more around what values were being met for you and therefore why it felt so deeply purposeful?
I had not thought about that at all, Matt. Absolutely. I felt it was really unfair for the juniors that they didn't have the information. And so it was absolutely hitting that fairness value, and that I wanted everyone to be given the same opportunities. And I didn't think it was fair for the junior people not to have the same information shared with them, to not have the understanding, and to not have the opportunity to be able to do it. And again, that fairness, that justice, that all those things is I didn't want people to be held back just because they didn't have the knowledge. And so it absolutely hit on those values.
And you talked a little bit about the impact and the feedback that you received, which sounds amazing. We love a 5-star review from those, especially who don't give them. So we'll definitely take that. Are you able to share a little bit more around the feedback that you received specifically about the role that you played in the work? And if we're able to, maybe a little bit more around the sort of impact on the system, the wider sort of ripples that we might well have seen afterwards. So, but let's start with you. What was the feedback coming back around you at this sort of high energy version of self? What were the words that people were using?
So I think encouraging was a word that came out a lot. People felt invigorated. They felt empowered. They felt that and interestingly, it's a group of people who are very time poor. And so asking them to take a day out to do this was a really big ask.
Yeah.
And so I knew the importance of making sure that they got something out of it. And the feedback that I received so my personal feedback was very much that it was a high energy, it was very enlightening, it was exciting, it was all those types of things. And that was what I was trying to bring to the space, was that it wasn't a boring day of information, but that we still were able to give them the information. So it was, I had to deliver the information, but I wanted to do it in a way that kept them engaged.
Yeah.
So engaging, I guess, is it. And then on the wider system, the feedback was, what has happened to our juniors? They are all on fire. And so it was very tangibly connected off the back of this. They understood how to play the game, and they all went out and played it. And that was up to them. That was not for me to do. My idea was give them the tools to empower them. And if they want, and some didn't, some, to be completely fair, some of them were very happy where they were, happy to sit in the system and happy to be there, but they knew what they had to do to progress if they wanted to.
Amazing. Something you said a minute ago, which really sort of resonated for me, was that there was this, I identified a problem, I knew there was a solution, but really importantly, I used, and these were your words, you used my talents. Talk to me about your talents. When you're absolutely at your best, what would we be noticing in terms of your talents, Kimberly? What would we really see and feel? What would be going on for us?
So I think one of my big talents is bringing people out of their shells. So it's that, sometimes it's described as being a breath of fresh air, or people coming out feeling energized and being able to feel up and uplifted. And it's not even necessary, even if you're in a dark space, I think it's that support, that almost wrapping someone around with the knowledge that you're there for them, I think is one of my strengths. And I think coming alongside people and helping them see things differently is another one. And just encouraging and empowering people. It's that whole support of others that I think I bring with this energy and this lightness that I think is what my superpower is, more or less.
How much do we use that superpower in your work and in your home?
I use it a lot at home. I mean, if we were doing percentages, about 80% of the time when I'm not screaming at children to put their shoes on. Definitely. I love to engage my kids in those conversations of empowerment and support. At work, part of the reason why I shifted my role internally was to do more of that. And now I've shifted to having my own business to do it full time. So I would say I'm now able to use those strengths probably 80% of the time, because again, there's admin.
Yeah.
So I would say probably 80. There's not a lot of happiness in admin for me, but I'm sure I could find a way.
Well, we just need to make sure that there's an element of fairness and opportunity and justice in doing our admin.
In admin.
Okay, superb. So I love this language you're talking around about superpower and talents and your ability to shift from where you were to where you are now in terms of career, and being able to really leverage a lot of that. It'd be really nice to come back to that just in a moment around what you want to do going forward with those superpowers and talents, and potentially bring even more of that into your life if you would love to do it. Just before we do that, though, it's quite useful in coaching sometimes to look at the alternative experiences that you have, taking you to the extremity of, I guess, survival is a word we sometimes use in coaching. You used the word sort of in dark moments earlier. So let's just take a moment, again, a moment of reflection would be great. When you look back over your career and your life and your experiences, and you think about times when you were in survival mode, maybe you're able to select one or two experiences. Again, just take a moment of silence. What did you notice about what was going on for you in survival mode?
Immediately the word "I have to do this" comes to mind. It was almost, I felt people were imposing something on me, or I was imposing something on myself that I had to get done.
Mm,
So for full disclosure, I used to be a lawyer,
mm,
and for me, reviewing contracts was basically death. Sitting down by myself and having done, having done MBTI, it was very much something that someone with an introverted preference would probably really like.
mhm.
Somebody with a J preference would probably really like, around that detail,
Yeah.
that, sitting by yourself and getting through it. And I would physically fall asleep.
Yeah.
I felt drained. I felt, I think darkness. Like even if I was sitting in a really sunny place, I could feel darkness almost.
Yeah.
And it was just, I was depleted. I was not energized. And it took me so long to do things. Whereas if I'm doing something, if I'm preparing a presentation, or I have to talk on a subject matter, I can pick that up. I can review it 30 minutes. I can go out, I can nail it and do an awesome job. But if I was having to review a contract, that might take me days, where somebody who, my husband, for example, who's a very diligent lawyer, can sit down and do it 30 minutes, it's done.
Mm,
But that presentation will take him days.
And so you're referring back to MBTI preference. You're almost describing your opposing preference, actually, in
Yeah.
survival mode versus the one that we described earlier in thrive mode. Any sort of trigger points for you? Anything that snaps you into that? Now I'm back in survival mode. What? Anything triggers, beliefs, anything that's worth just taking a moment to think through?
So interestingly, what came to mind immediately is really negative people
Mm,
affect me massively.
okay.
So when I'm dealing with someone who is incredibly negative, who, you're like, the sun is shining, and they're like, well, you're going to get sunburned.
Mm,
And you're like, the birds are singing, they're like, isn't it noisy?
mm,
I can feel, even just saying it, I can feel that visceral reaction that I have to that.
mm,
And that brings me, I think it might be a bit of my emotional sponge, where because I want to wrap people up, because I want to support people, because I'm high energy, because I'm positive, when I'm up against that, it's like so hitting against me, that
mm,
I find that to be a big trigger for me, that turns me into that dark space.
mm. Yes, it's sort of I hope you don't mind me just sort of sharing, but it makes me think a lot about the work we do in the sort of resilience and well-being space. And one of the big drivers and indicators in that space is what we call meaningful relationships, which is turning off negative relationships and turning on the positive ones that work for you. And that we're all slightly different. We all need those different things, but it really feels as though there's a direct impact of those external negative relationships on your own sense of ability to thrive or survive.
And I think if you're working with someone you're their direct report, so your boss.
Yeah.
If you're working for someone who's like that, I've recognized I need to get out of that situation. It's
Mm,
not something that I can overcome,
yeah.
because of the fact that it's just all consuming.
Yeah.
And so there's been times when actually I've had to recognize that, and I recognize I'm at my best when I'm working around other people who allow me to be at my best, who
Mm,
don't try to constrain me, who don't try to hold me down. Because I feel like a lot of times it's that wings, your wings are clipped, and you're like, I could do so much more if you would just let me. And that feeling for me is another thing that I find really can constrain me and can bring me into that dark space as well.
mm. Really lovely. You have a natural skill around sort of metaphor and imagery. It's beautiful as you articulate it. Let's maybe take a moment. I'm going to direct the conversation just back to where we were, just for a very, very brief moment, and I'm using that language consciously. You said something just a moment ago, which was superb, which was my wings feel clipped when I'm in survival mode. What's the opposing metaphor for you when you're in thrive mode?
The eagle soaring. Absolutely. It's that wings full out, huge, beautiful wings, just out and able to feel strong and and you're using the wind. I mean, you think about eagles on the wind, they're using the stuff around them to just even fly higher and soar more. It's not them on their own flapping, they're literally soaring. So I love that.
Beautiful metaphor for what it feels like for you to be in that space of at your best in thrive mode. So let's take this. Remember, this is coaching. So this is about the sort of so what. How do we take that forward? How do you want to take that forward? That lovely, rich imagery of eagles soaring and your ability to move from sort of must do to love to. You talked about currently around about 80% of your new working world allows you to be in this space. But how would you like to take that forward, that reflection forward, bringing even more of your best self to life for yourself and for the value of the others around you?
Yeah, I think there's something there for me around how do I use my best self? So how do I bring the benefits of that? I guess with the eagle soaring bit, it's a bit of, I almost feel like I need little eaglets is how I'm feeling. I don't know why they're there, but I feel like it's almost like I need to also be protecting others and helping them to soar. And I feel there's something around that for me that's coming up. And it's around how can I continue to help develop others in this new space that I'm in? That's exactly what it is. And how does that work? Because that's something that really helps me to soar, is developing others. So where is that in my new world? And am I getting that? I think that's what's coming up for me.
Okay, let's ask the question. Where is it in your new world? And are you getting it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have, so I separately have developed a podcast, which is all about helping to take people along the journey and share the knowledge that I have gotten. And I'm sharing that with others. And I think that I've been struggling to figure out how it's working with my life because it takes time and what the benefit is. And I think that right there just showed me what the benefit is that that's helping me to support others. And I'm getting feedback from that people are saying, wow, this really unlocked something for me. I hadn't thought about this before. That was really helpful. So I think my little eaglets right now are sitting behind that. And I think I can look for other opportunities to develop other people and bring them along on the journey as well, as I go forward in my business.
Even as you hear yourself say that, what goes through your mind and what's sort of sitting with you?
So I think one of the things that I think, again, interestingly, a bit of pro bono has come into my mind of helping people. It's almost that there's something there around developing people and helping people that maybe can't afford it. And there's something there that's coming up for me around using my talents again in a way that's helpful to others.
Yeah, you mentioned something earlier around values. Justice, I think, was one of your sort of values. So if we just bring the word justice into play, what goes on for you as we bring that word in?
Yeah. So is it fair that the only people that have access to coaching are people that have money? Is the question. And it's not. And I felt that way. And also, is it just for senior executives? I'm very passionate about the fact that people that are midline, anybody that's a manager, even people who are juniors, I've actually coached a PA before, which I found invaluable because it helped her to do all the things that coaching helps people to do. And so how is it that I can actually develop that alongside my practice, because I have to make money? How can I develop that alongside the practice to help others and bring that justice in? I love that.
Okay, can I maybe just encourage you to take a moment to make a note of what you just said? Maybe just make a note of the question that you're asking yourself rather than seeing it as an action. What's the question you're currently asking yourself off the back of this conversation? Really encouraging you to think about your own language. Earlier today, you talked about hitting all my buttons. You've really talked about this eagle soaring, this sort of sense of empowerment and encouragement of others aligned to your values of fairness and justice. So just giving yourself a moment of reflection.
How can I help others is what has come up for me through coaching.
Hmm. Superb.
Hmm. And it's more than, because as a coach, you help others all the time. That's part of the game. It's to help others, and you
Mm.
get paid for it. But it's also, how can you help others in a wider context?
Really, really lovely. It's just in terms of giving feedback, it's interesting watching your energy change. Actually, it's gone from this to this, and
Mm,
it seems quite reflective for a moment.
absolutely. I'm feeling that. I'm absolutely feeling that.
Mm.
It's the importance that's sitting with me. I think that's what's striking me is, and I'm thinking about the eagle soaring and how it'll soar even higher if I can bring that justice in.
Superb. Absolutely superb. Okay, let's bring coaching to a close for today. We can pick up this at any point in the future and go into a little bit more detail. Just taking a moment, anything that you want to check in around, or any copy of any notes needed, anything that's important to you as we bring the conversation to a close?
No, I think you actually just reflecting back the things, I wrote them down as you said them, but
Mm.
kind of the hitting the buttons, the eagle soaring, that sort of thing is helpful to just have that, to be able to write that down. I loved having the time and space with you here, so I wasn't focusing on it, but I liked having that time
Mm.
at the end just to write that down. That was really helpful.
Really lovely. And just a bit of feedback as well in terms of presenteeism in coaching. It's amazing um, working with a client when they're so present
Mm.
and self-aware and invested, and you see that shift of energy where something really resonates, and that lovely word of justice just bringing everything to a close as you go forth eagle soaring.
Thanks so much, Matt. This has been absolutely phenomenal.
Lovely to see you today, Kimberly, and I look forward to seeing you at the next session.
See you next time.
Bye.
That concludes the coaching demonstration. If you'd like to learn more about professional coaching, please visit www.matthewradley.co.uk.